I hope they win gold. I want us to always win the gold medal. You know, it's not really it's not a good team to put together. You know, I don't think they did a good job because if you watch all those guys, they're all good players now, don't get me wrong, but they all need the ball. And you take away DeAndre Jordan, every guy on that team is a ball-dominant guy. And you see them playing a lot of one-on-one basketball. That's the thing I notice more than anything. Like, you have to understand, when you put a team together like that, you have to have some role players who just like, I'm just going to play defense, and I'm just going to run up and down the court. If I get a shot, I get a shot. But you take a guy like Kyle Lowry, who's a hell of a player. He wants to score. Kyrie wants to score. Kevin wants to score. Yep. DeRozan wants to score. So I think they have been really stagnant offensively. So I think when they putting that team together in the future, they have to realize we can't have just really, really great offensive players. We got to have some players who, like, if they don't get a shot, they're not going to just stand around and mope.
Team USA takes on Manu Ginobili in Argentina today in the quarterfinals. Stephen A., do you agree with Charles Barkley there?
Somewhat. I think that, you know, the point that he's making is that you don't just need big names. You need guys that actually fit together. It's like putting a square peg in a round hole. You got to be careful about that. And I do believe that USA Basketball has gone about the business of trying to get an abundance of marquee names as opposed to guys who actually fit together. Maybe a few stars with a bevy of role players per se. And that's not what you really have here. And I think that's problematic for them to some degree. I just think the part that Charles Barkley left out that I deem to be most important is that we know that Mike Krzyzewski is an elite coach. Although it's going to be nice to see somebody else coaching Team USA Basketball, because I don't think one coach should be coaching them, you know, over the last 3 Olympics. It's going to be nice to see Greg Popovich up in there next go round. But Mike Krzyzewski is clearly a phenomenal coach that has proven that he can coach on any level. And the fact remains that, you know, you only gave him a week to coach the team in Las Vegas for training camp and before they played some exhibition games. You need more time than that. You need to respect Olympic competitors that way and put more time in to prepare yourself to go up against international competitors because they're accustomed to playing together. They have a camaraderie and a chemistry and a cohesion that you may not have. And so to do otherwise comes across as a bit arrogant on the part of Team USA because you're underestimating and diminishing the competition in that regard. Barkley is right to some degree, but not completely because guys do know how to play together to some degree. They are unselfish. They don't mind sharing the basketball. And I haven't just seen one-on-one. I've seen movement of the basketball. I've seen guys rooting for one another, sharing the basketball and looking for other guys to get off. I just think the problem is that their preparation wasn't what it should have been when you're going up against guys in international competition who are very familiar with playing against one another.
I totally agree with that. I think there's also something else to it, though, in terms of roster construction. When you don't have that playing together, and even when you try to get them to play together, Stephen A., it's not like some of these international teams that are just more familiar with each other, so they play more as a cohesive unit, which under international rules, you know, the rules of international competition, it's easier to overcome a talent gap than it is in the NBA. So there's that. And if you're not going to have LeBron James and all the top-tier players playing where the talent, it just doesn't matter. It's so great, it's going to overcome that. Then you need very careful roster construction. And when I look at this roster, it's not carefully constructed. Kevin Durant and Paul George are the only 2 players on the team where I look at that level of talent on both ends of the floor and their proximity to their primes and think, I don't care what kind of players those 2 guys are. They have to be on the team, even if they have redundant skills, which they don't. Even if one of them couldn't shoot, it wouldn't matter. Those 2 players are so excellent that they make the team no matter what. I got no problem with Carmelo Anthony on the team, given his skills. Kyrie Irving, the same thing, an emerging superstar who can also shoot the ball. Klay Thompson's the exact guy you want because every time he touches it, he's a threat to score. He can shoot from a distance. He can defend. Draymond Green doesn't really need the ball to be effective, so I'm okay with all of that. But then you look at some of the other guys on the roster. What's Harrison Barnes doing on the team? I mean, Harrison Barnes, forget about even the dismal performance, the abysmal performance in the finals just now. Harrison Barnes is a nice player. He's still kind of entering his prime. He is not on the level of the other players on the team in terms of his level of basketball play. Jimmy Butler, DeMar DeRozan, and Kyle Lowry, none of those guys are pure shooters. Kyle Lowry can shoot it, but talk about a guy who needs the ball and yet isn't quite on that Kyrie, Westbrook, that kind of level. I think they needed a little more careful roster construction, maybe a less ball-dominant point guard to back up Kyrie. Between DeRozan and Butler, I think you got to choose one of the two and then go get a shooter. So if you're not going to get that elite level talent, and as you say, you're not going to have the requisite preparation time, and then you don't have the talent to overcome it, boy, you better be precise with roster construction. I do not think that's the case in this Team USA.
Well, I just think that when you look at Harrison Barnes, that he's a good player, but you need to have some good players on the team. I mean, before Jimmy Butler emerged last year and really took over as the face of the Chicago Bulls, he was a good player, but he certainly wasn't considered a star. You need those players on every team. You need somebody who's a bit hungrier. You also need leadership. We understand that Draymond Green is one of those vocal leaders, and had he not gotten himself in some precarious situations during the offseason, he would have been in a better position to be a bit more loquacious and outspoken about a bevy of other things. Carmelo Anthony, we've seen him lead an Olympic competition as well, but people like myself and others are looking to see what he's going to do this coming NBA season, because I think the Eastern Conference is relatively vulnerable outside of the Cleveland Cavaliers. You need somebody on your squad that's not just a champion, not just somebody who's a star that can play, but somebody who embraces and has no problem being that vocal leader, that person that everybody wants to go to get that quote, to speak on behalf of others who don't want to speak. You always need that.
Those guys either need to, like Jimmy Butler, you mentioned, before he became an excellent player, was a really good defensive player. Like he was a defensive stopper. I don't see Harrison Barnes. Like, Harrison Barnes is a nice overall player, a kind of typical, maybe starter-level NBA player. I don't see what special role he fills on this team. DeRozan's an excellent player, but again, cannot shoot it. Butler can shoot it at times, but I wouldn't say is a pure shooter. I just don't think they thought that through carefully enough. I don't think it's enough to say who's the best available guy. It's like those guys are the Durants, the Paul George, Carmelo, Kyrie. Once you get those guys, then you look for the guys who don't need the ball. Draymond Green, for example, I think is a very good example. And then you have to find the proper role players. This guy can shoot it. This guy can defend. And I just don't see the thought process here when I look at the roster.
I disagree with you to some degree, but we don't have time. You took up all my time.
Shout out to Team USA. The women's, though, with Gino Auriemma coaching, they have certainly been crushing. When we come back, Max, what's your reaction?
Well, I mean, normally I'd be very against this kind of statement. What, Stephen A., what are you talking about, DeAndre Jordan? That sounds like an excuse. That sounds like a flipper who's looking over at the Thunder going, we're never going to be able to get by them. Let me start making excuses now. I've been in L.A. from basically DeAndre Jordan's whole career until recently when I came back east. And I don't want to sound like patronizing about it, but it's impossible not to feel proud of him if you've been watching his whole career. He goes from a second-round project to an all-star center. He's made amazing progress on his game, especially defensively, where he didn't know what he was doing. He was all just kind of raw talent, and now he's really he's just an excellent player. So, you feel proud of him that way, if you can use that word. But DeAndre Jordan's never expected to be the best player on a championship team, as Carmelo Anthony is, for example. And when he says this, I don't hear it as an excuse. I hear it as a guy saying, look, we play this once every 4 years. This is an entire world competition. It's something that would make me feel better than anything else. If he were expected to be the best player on a championship team, I would say timeout, DeAndre. That's an excuse. You're looking at the Thunder, and you're making preemptive excuses. I don't hear that this way.
You can hear it any way you want to. The bottom line is this. It's an inexcusable comment. Now, unlike the situation with Carmelo Anthony, when he gave a quote and gave extensive quotes and said, according to him, said far more than what we had heard, unless that's the argument that DeAndre Jordan is going to make. I think that the manner in which he conveyed his thoughts was crystal clear. I mean, he said directly, this is more. And this is even better. It's, NBA champion is every year. Olympic gold medal is every 4 years or whatever the case may be. I don't even know what to say about it. It's an egregious statement as far as I'm concerned, and it's something that would make me look at him totally different. Not necessarily me, but if I'm Chris Paul, I got an attitude with him right now. If I'm Blake Griffin, if I'm Doc Rivers, I got an attitude with him right now because I need you to come back here, and I need you to shoot better than 37% from the field, from the free throw line, rather, like you did in the playoffs this past season. Or, the career 40% shooting from the free throw line in the postseason. Don't get me started with what he does in the regular season. I need better than that. And when you're prioritizing Olympic gold medals, when we're the one giving you $80 to $88 million, and you're playing 82 games for us, plus the postseason, and you're talking about how good this feels, it means to me you're either allergic to winning on the NBA level, you really don't know what it takes to win on the NBA level, or you're just smoking something. So the way I look at it is that, again, he's not Carmelo Anthony in terms of being a primary star on a team, but DeAndre Jordan, who averaged like 13 rebounds a game over the last couple of years, along with more than 2.5 blocks per game. This dude is a preeminent defensive player who's alluded to being a bit perturbed that he hasn't been selected as an all-star. And then you make a statement like this, and it validates why that is, because you're not prioritizing winning on the level that you get paid to win on. Instead, you're more fixated with winning in the Olympics, which, by the way, where you perform for free.
I think he's just talking about how he feels about it. In his off time from the NBA, this is what he's pursuing. And when asked a direct question about how he feels about it, he'd say, "You feel better about this." That's very different than Carmelo Anthony's response, even if he contextualizes it along the line of how much he wants to win a championship, which is, yes, as a guy, parenthetically, as a guy who's supposed to be the best player on a championship caliber team, I would be okay with my career if what I had was 3 Olympic gold medals and tried my best and didn't win a championship. That, to me, is much more egregious than DeAndre Jordan saying, yeah, I would like this even more. I think Carmelo's transgression is worse.
I don't find that to be the case. I don't find that to be the case, because I did find that originally when I said what I said about Carmelo. But when he explained to me that's not what he said, he was talking about at the end of the day, if you end your career and this is what you have, would you feel that way about it? He said, but while I'm still playing, I'm in pursuit of that ring because that's the thing that hurts the most, the fact that I haven't captured an NBA championship. That's entirely different than what we just read that DeAndre Jordan had said.
All right, we got to go to break. We got to agree to disagree on this one. Team USA takes on Manu Ginobili in Argentina today.